Hello, everybody. I have got Tom with me here today, and we are going to be talking about kind of all things intelligent automation, looking at RPA, process mining, and AI. But before we get into the questions that I have for you, Tom, would you mind giving a quick introduction?
Sure, and great to be here. Hope everyone's doing well. In terms of my background's more on the technical side. So I grew up programming computers, and that led to starting some companies in the internet, even before the internet time period. And then since then, I've invested in different companies. And then I do write for Forbes.com, where I cover a lot of tech topics. And I've written a variety of books. The two of the latest, one is on AI for non-technical people, and then another is on robotic process automation for how to implement that technology in your organization.
Perfect. So again, you've got just the right skills to help us talk to everybody and shed a little bit more light on some of these terms and kind of what they mean. So when we were last talking about just digital transformation as a whole, one of the things that you mentioned to me is that you think RPA is a really great way for organizations to kind of take that first step in that transformation, or even kind of leveraging some of these intelligent tools. Can you share a little bit more about that idea?
Yeah, sure. And I think, we in the media, blow things out of proportion. We always, talk about the latest and the greatest. And I think for companies, they think, oh, we must have this huge AI project and invest in all these digital technologies. And then we hear the horror stories of things going off the rails and the projects not going beyond proof of concept. What I think about RPA is it's a good first step because ROI tends to be very good. It tends to be quick. And then the organization itself can usually do it on their own. Maybe they need a consultant on the front end for 6 months or so. But after that, if they have a center of excellence and maybe a bot developer, they can usually do well with that. So if you're looking for some type, if you're not really, you're just kind of the early stages of digital transformation, and I think all companies are thinking about that right now. The baby steps approach, I think, is good, and I think a good first step is with RPA, but plan it. Don't rush into it. All these things just take time, and I think people get so excited about doing things, and then it just leads to expectations that are not met. But RPA is definitely a way to go.
And you mentioned that one of your books is specific to kind of how to be successful with an RPA implementation. Can you share a little bit of that wisdom with us in terms of kind of tips and tricks for being successful with that plan?
Yeah. Definitely. So I think one is you need buy-in from the highest levels. If it's the CEO, that's the best. But if it's the CTO or CFO, that's still good. If you don't have that buy-in, it's probably not going to progress too well because with any type of initiative within a company that requires budget and people's time, unless you have some type of backing, it's not going to go anywhere. So I think that's the first step. I think the other step is to evaluate your current processes. There are things like lean, and you got the black belts and all. Been around for decades, but you don't necessarily have to hire that type of person. But it's good to think in those terms about really objectively looking at your processes and where are the bottlenecks. What can be improved. What are the things that are really slowing down your organization? So I think that's a really crucial part of understanding, because you want to go for the low-hanging fruit at first, and so look at your processes. I do think a good first step is to hire consultants. And, I think consultants get, people don't like consultants but, they bring an outside perspective. They have a background in that category. They see different clients, and so you benefit from that. And in my book, I've talked to companies like Intuit, Voya, all these are great companies. They hired consultants early on in that process. And these are very sophisticated technological, company. Intuit is an amazing company. It's not like they don't understand technology, and yet they brought in a consultant to help them out. And by the way, they've had a very successful RPA implementation, and they've been able to increase and make it better over time. I also think to have some type of workshop, something where you bring the people together, you explain and educate. I think you have to do a lot of communication education about what RPA is, what it means, what it can do realistically. And then I think there's always that nagging question in the back of people's heads is, am I going to lose my job? And so I think you just have to be upfront and talk to people honestly about what the goals are, what you're looking to do. So I think and then over time I think you should have a center of excellence, and that will help evolve the system, monitor the system, make it better over time. So those are some of the things just top of my head that I would do with that.
Wonderful. You mentioned the idea of process and bringing in a consultant, which again, Navians certainly fans of that because that's part of what we do. But speaking specifically about kind of looking at your processes and making sure that you're automating in the right spots, we talked a little bit about process mining and how that can really closely complement your RPA efforts and probably augment and complement those consulting services as well. Can you share a little bit about why you think process mining is kind of starting to get more of a strong reputation in the US when it kind of started in Europe?
Yeah, so process mining looks at log files in your IT systems, and through those log files, it gets a sense of what's going on with your processes and tasks and so forth. And you can do great visualizations and find areas that need improvement. And it's not just on the front end. Process mining, it can be an ongoing thing within your company. You just don't buy a little fee for, these companies are smart. They find ways to make money off you. But there is legitimate reasons for having a process mining system in there over time. Process mining uses sophisticated algorithms like machine learning and so forth. So you are getting a little into the AI world when you're going down the road of process mining. Process mining, though, is a little complicated. A lot of the players come from Europe, and they tend to be open source projects. And so for, say, like a mid-sized company, that may be a little complicated for them. But what we're seeing is some of these RPA companies like UiPath. UiPath bought a process mining company. So I do think in the next few years, these RPA, so at least the major ones, are going to start implementing process mining into their own systems. Again, about a consultant. If you're looking for a consultant, you might ask the consultant, "What's your experience with process mining? Do you use a tool with that?" And if they do, that might be a good sign with that consultant.
Wonderful. And then I know earlier on when we were talking through that first question, you mentioned the idea that sometimes organizations kind of think they have to jump in with both feet into like AI and intelligent automation. But can you talk a little bit about how organizations can start to practically leverage AI, starting today?
Yeah. And, one thing about AI is it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and including the tech industry. And you see a lot of companies, they call themselves, or they say they have AI, and they really don't. So there's clearly a lot of hype, but at the same time, there's true legitimate applications of AI. And what AI is really just taking a lot of data that you have, and data that we as humans really could not process or really understand, and making sense out of it. So for most companies, AI is about business intelligence, getting insights. There's a whole nother level of AI. There's a company they called Lemonade that just went public. It's a AI company from the start, built from scratch. That is an insurance company that, you don't talk to a person, you talk to a bot. It's stuff like that. It's kind of crazy. That's a whole nother level of AI, but you don't really need that. So if you're going to go into AI, go to the BI level first, about insights, understanding how to use data-driven decisions, forecasting, predictions, and so forth, or recommendations. But I don't recommend you go and start a project either. You may not even have the data. And even if you have the data, you may not even be able to use it, or it may not be high quality. Most of the data you have is not high quality, so you have to go through the data. So I think a really good first step when it comes to using AI in the early stages is to look at what you have already. If you have Salesforce, they have Einstein. Take a look at that. How can you leverage some of the AI products you already have The other irony is you're probably using AI in your organization and don't even realize it. Because a lot of these vendors are implementing these features. They may not even call it AI, but you are benefiting from that. So I think the first step is to really evaluate the buy versus build decision. My feeling is a lot of times it's a buy decision. Probably default to that unless you have extremely good reasons and resources and the data and the technical capability. You probably want to go with the buy decision.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that's, you mentioned Einstein within Salesforce. I can think of a number of other applications that I know that maybe aren't, AI in the sense of like Will Smith interacting with his robot back in the day, but leveraging that intelligence and being able to, like you said, take the data and things that our brain can't necessarily comprehend or take action on and leverage it. I know some of the tools that we have, like our optical character recognition solutions, are template free and they're using context on the page. That's a flavor of AI, but again, it's built within a different platform and you might not really even realize that it's going on in the background. Well, wonderful.
Well, who would have thought OCR would be actually cool again? I mean, that's been around for a long time. And the other thing about AI, a lot of these technologies are not new. I mean, AI got its start in the 50s, and a lot of it was machine learning. So there's a lot of things that insurance companies have been using for decades, or financial services companies or manufacturers that are really AI. So, a lot of companies don't realize that, but because AI is such a big topic.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you joining me, Tom, to talk through some of this and kind of break down these technologies for anybody that's joining us. Please feel free to pop on over to Tom's LinkedIn. He's got, like you mentioned, tons of articles and other information along with the books that you can use to kind of learn more about this industry. But again, thank you for joining us and have a wonderful day, everybody.
All right. Well, thank you.